Welcome to Nurture the Soul. I'm your host today, Cheryl Lindsay, Minister for Worship and Theology for the United Church of Christ. Nurture the Soul is a weekly webinar sharing practical, educational, innovative, and formational resources and engaging critical topics for local churches and people of faith. Produced by Justice and Local Church Ministries of the United Church of Christ. We faithfully focus on care and education for the people of God, from cultural and community organizing to congregational leadership, from worship and theology to resourcing small and rural churches, from ministry with youth and children to wide-ranging justice issues. Featuring guest artists, authors, and key leaders, Nurture the Soul stays current to how the gospel is alive in this time. This is a space for connection, community, and nurture. Together, we can bring our church, our community, and the world towards the world God imagines for all of us. Join us every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time for Nurture the Soul, and look for special offerings from time to time as well. We are always producing opportunities to engage, and you can find a full list of upcoming digital programming offerings at ucc.org/events or any of our social media platforms. Beloved, if these conversations move you, if what's offered here helps enhance your ministry or your soul, please consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your prayerful and financial support helps programs like this and the essential work of the United Church of Christ. Thank you and thank you. And today we continue our series on reimagining ritual, in keeping and continuing the theme from General Synod, making all things new. We'll be launching a multi-layer project to do a new thing with ritual, liturgy, and worship under the umbrella of reimagining ritual. This webinar series begins the conversation, and I'm happy today to welcome our friends and ecumenical partners from the United Church of Canada as we consider the work of a new project that we're introducing to the United Church of Christ. Then let us sing. I would like to invite my friends and panelists today to introduce themselves, to share a little bit about their context and their role on this project. And I'll begin with my counterpart in the United Church of Canada, Lydia Smith.
Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. As Cheryl said, I am her counterpart in the United Church of Canada. I work to support and resource worship and music and spirituality resources within the United Church, and it is my delight and my honor to be staff support for the wonderful, amazing team of folks who are working on Then Let Us Sing, our new hymnal project. And I'll pass it to Lloyd, who is the chair of the development committee for Then Let Us Sing. Sorry, I shouldn't introduce you. Lloyd, you can introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks, Cheryl, for the invitation. As Lydia mentioned, I'm the chair. That simply means that I audit most of the subcommittees and participate to some degree in several of them. And I'm excited to be part of this project, but even more excited that we have the United Church of Christ along with us in full communion with the United Church of Canada. So great to be here. And yes, I was trying to answer Catherine that yes, we're waiting for Hurricane Lee here, but I, as usual, pushed the wrong button and lost myself for a while. Anyway, I'm back, and Lee is not here yet.
Well, stay safe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will. So would we pass that on to Catherine?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Reverend Dr. Catherine Faith McLean. I live in Edmonton, a great distance from Lloyd. And although we have a common last name, we're only related by affection and by commitment and by having a lot of fun together. Lloyd's in Nova Scotia. I'm in Edmonton, the capital city of Alberta, which is a very, very long day's drive north of the Montana border, the 53rd parallel. Métis homeland. made it region number 4 and treaty number 6. And it's the Papachase Cree who lived and moved and had their being where my congregation is. I'm sitting in my church study. I serve a congregation that is largely connected to the University of Alberta, where people do a lot of work in gas and oil research, trying to save the world in a different kind of way, moving beyond those kinds of fuels. And my work, a lot of my work in my ordained role here is about the care of souls and working in theology in particular with my congregation here as the senior pastor. And I've had the pleasure of doing a lot of theological work across the church, including being part of the writing of our last statement of faith, which will surface as we come along to tell you about the exciting theology. And really, I think what we're going to tell you about is what we're going to sing and why we're going to sing what we sing when we sing a new song. So lovely to be with you all. And thank you so much for this invitation, Cheryl. I chair a subcommittee of this group called Education, Justice, and Ethos. And I have the pleasure of Cheryl's company in that subcommittee. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. I do serve on the subcommittee, EJE, as we call it, at the United Church of Canada and the United Church of Christ. We love our acronyms and our initials for the work that we do. It's such a pleasure to be part of this in full communion, as Lloyd said, between our two denominations. And as we do the work of introducing this upcoming new resource to the United Church of Christ, it is my real delight to share a video that Lydia created to give an introduction to this work. So we'll watch that brief video now, and then we'll enter in time of conversation. As those of you who have joined us may have questions, I already see people actively greeting one another in the chat. Please feel free to use the Q&A function or to put your question in the chat, because we do want to respond to any questions that you may have as well. So let's go and turn to the video.
I used to know this wise woman who had an emergency folding tambourine that she kept in her purse for when the Spirit moved her. It was loud. I used to know this wise woman who had an emergency folding tambourine that she kept in her purse for when the Spirit moved her. It was loud and it was tinny and I did not like it, but I loved that she had it, and I loved the presence of the Spirit within her when she played it. I also loved how this folding tambourine reminded me of Miriam, along with the many other wise women who brought a tambourine with them when fleeing Egypt. These women knew that it was a necessity to provide tools of art and praise, because art and praise are essential. They're essential to our survival, especially when in wilderness times. And we've come through some wilderness times these past few years. With Then Let Us Sing, I believe and I hope that we are embracing and channeling the wise wisdom of our ancestors and providing tools and resources to promote congregational song and congregational singing. We believe that faithful congregational singing can nurture and sustain spiritual growth, can provide a faithful antidote to the fear and uncertainty that's around and within us, and can help us as a church community move closer towards God's dream realized. As Miriam left a legacy for us to help us faithfully journey through the wilderness, we hope to leave a legacy of faithful song for future generations. In order to do this, and to do this well, we have partnered with GIA Publications and Hope Publishing, and are proud to be working in collaboration with the United Church of Christ to create a dynamic, faithful online hymn portal accessible through a one license subscription. This portal will grow, change, and adapt with us. Here, communities of faith will be able to access songs that we have sung for hundreds of years, and songs that we hope will nurture faith 100 years from now and more. We hope to support the whole people of God in singing our praise, whether it's with a folding tambourine that you whip out of your purse or a fancy folding smartphone. We are here to help people sing faithfully.
Thank you for that introduction. And I just love that image of the woman with the emergency folding tambourine. I mean, just to imagine being prepared for the emergency occasion of needing to break out in praise is such a delightful, delightful image. So if we can just begin the conversation and talk about how congregational singing, particularly amongst United Church of Canada congregations, is such a important fabric, has been such an important fabric of the identity of United Church of Canada congregations in particular. And anyone can jump in.
I'll take a stab at that.
Sure.
This group was brought together by Lydia a number of years ago, and initially we were tasked with producing an ecumenical hymn resource, and so we had representation from various parts of the United Church of Canada. Also, Sue Blaine, your predecessor, was with us, and Peter Stickney from Maine, and we also had people from the Anglican Church in Canada and the Presbyterian Church in Canada. But we were also very aware that in 2025, the United Church of Canada is celebrating our 100th anniversary. And so as our conversations progressed, we determined that whatever we were going to do, our efforts would be directed at a project that would help to celebrate that anniversary. And also we naturally moved to planning, looking at worship and planning a worship resource. And it turns out that we're still pretty happy with our main hymnal, which is Voices United. And we realized that we didn't really have time or financing to support developing a completely new full hymnal, and didn't really recognize a need to do that. We published a supplement to Voices United about, I can't do the math, a few years ago. And it's relatively fresh in people's minds. And we also have a French language supplement called No Voix Unie. So Voices United, more voices, no voix unie. We thought, let's just do another supplement, but let's digitize all of them and make them available in one place. And although they're all individually referenced as far as scriptural references and those sorts of things, that we would cross-reference all those existing resources. And so that's where we ended up. And our corporate partners, as Lydia mentioned, are Hope Publishing, who are doing the engraving of the new material, and will publish the paper version, but mainly the whole version will be digital and downloadable right across those 4 resources, and that will all be done through one licensed the GIA company. So that was a pretty exciting development too, because just the way publishing is going these days, Hope Publishing and GIA were quite happy to collaborate with us and with each other on this project. So exciting for a number of reasons.
Mhm.
I think
Great.
to add a little bit to what Lloyd is saying, one of the things that I'm really excited about with this project and the digitization of our existing collection of hymnody is the opportunity to change things. So to look at things that might not grow with us in the same way, to create a canon where our entire collection is living. And we know that 5 years from now, we might not be able to sing this in the same way, and that's okay. We now have a way to take that out of the canon or replace it or to retire it gracefully. So I really appreciate how Then Let Us Sing, we hope, is a way forward that will continue for many years to come in how we can have living hymn resources within our communities and dynamic hymn resources.
Mhm. Catherine, any thoughts?
Well, I'd like to tell you a bit about how we decided what we would like to encourage people to be singing, because there is such a wide range of fabulous hymnody. And the United Church of Canada is a very small church with a really big backyard. We're a huge geography, and we are connected across the country, and we have congregations in Bermuda. So we do have a specific ethos, and we have a heritage, a tradition, and we have hopes for the future that are unique to who we are. We're happy to be joined with people of all kinds of other religious and Christian traditions beyond who we are. But we needed to say, who are we as we do the singing? So I want to read you a little line from A Song of Faith, which was published in 2006, the fourth of 4 statements of faith that are subordinate to Scripture in the United Church of Canada. And when we were writing that, we were bold enough to say this: through word, music, art, and sacrament, in community and in solitude, God changes our lives, our relationships, and our world. We sing with trust. So we're coming out of an understanding that what we sing actually changes the world and people's lives. It's not just, pretty or fun, although those are good, but there's profound spiritual presence in this. Mm-hmm. And what do we want to be asking people to sing? What do we want to be coming through this embodied incarnational spirit of who we are? And so we looked at the dreams, the aspirations for our denomination, and we have been really clear about our humility with First Nations, our apologies, our deep work at reconciling through truth and through action, not simply words, but words give form to what we choose to do. We've also been really clear that we are an affirming congregation so that LGBTQ Two-Spirit voices are not simply present, but lifted up. We're proactive. We are encouraging. So we needed those voices to be able to sing the songs that make our hearts sing all together in that. So we purposefully set out to look for that material, knowing that we can't publish everything, but looking at who we are as a denomination, honoring our heritage, being humble and apologetic, and also being really joyful. This is who we understand ourselves to be. This is who we understand God to be in our time. And that has changed in our 100 years of being church. So descriptions of who we understand God to be, and in the diverse mix of who we are, we're going to get lots of understandings about that as well. So we were really clear that this is what we're looking for. And I have to say, it was quite a thrill at the North American Hymn Society when we presented what we're doing to have scholars and composers from across the continent saying, your focus is really clear. Your focus is really important. And to give us some gratitude for the really hard work we did on that. Because part of being a small church with a big backyard is we are greatly diverse. So to be able to create something where lots of voices can sing is going to be really important. And we're just delighted with the way that's coming together.
I think that the emphasis on singing congregationally as opposed to music as performance and worship is distinct. And so I think I and perhaps this is from the outside looking in, but I think that and you can correct me if I'm incorrect about this, but I think that there is a higher priority, and that may not be the right word, but emphasis on congregational singing. Not that we don't have congregational singing in United Church of Christ, but I think there are definitely churches that have more of an emphasis on that than others. I would say that in general, though, the church in America, including more progressive denominations like the United Church of Christ, there is this shift to more performative worship, and where a praise team or where choirs stand in for the congregation. And yes, there may be opportunities for congregational singing, but the shift ultimately is for this performance focus versus congregational engagement. And while the order may be the same, it's just a difference in experience in worship, where you may have a praise team mic'd and everyone else may be singing with them, but what do you actually hear? Hearing the voices of the person next to you, or that person with their emergency tambourine, or as opposed to the folks who are almost at a professional, if not professional level. And that's not to say one is wrong or one is better, but to say that it is a difference. And so I think having a hymnal project or a songbook project as central to your celebration of your anniversary speaks volumes to how important it is and how central congregational singing is in the United Church of Canada.
I might just respond to that a little bit, Cheryl. With I'm a layperson and have been involved as the music editor some years ago with our periodical worship planning resource that's called Gathering. And what I should have mentioned earlier was that one of the legs of our project was digitizing that periodical resource. But one of the beautiful features of that resource is that it's almost entirely driven by contributions from congregations right across the country, and some come from your country as well. In effect, all the material that is presented in the worship planning copies of Gathering, and now Gathering online, has been vetted and road tested in our own congregations, and so that presents an opportunity of shared ownership in terms of the resources that we're using, and the situation you described in terms of performative versus straight congregational is a very real situation in many places. But I still think, coming from a rural community, and I work at a couple of churches, but one of which is very small, and quite often the choir outnumbers the congregation, but it's a very tiny little chapel-sized church, and that presents it's a good acoustic, and people are forced to sit close together, which means they have a much better chance of singing together and singing well together. So Yeah, but that's certainly a reality in many congregations across the continent, for sure.
Great.
I do think, to add to the conversation as well, that within the Then Let Us Sing committee, and I know personally for myself that I see this resource as a faith formation tool and resource, and congregational singing is, well, it changes us, right? And how we sing and what we sing changes us. So really, we want communities to be singing. We want people to be breathing together, conspiring together, growing together, just as a guitar player changes physically because of their playing. Like, you get the calluses to prove it. When we're singing these songs together, we want our faith and our sense of hope and our language for God and how we do ritual together to change as well. So we need to sing. Like, it needs to be all of us in some way. And it doesn't necessarily need to be singing as we know singing. That's part of why we also are including ASL interpretation and ASL within the collection as well. Like, we're trying to move towards how we move together. How do we do this together as faithful people?
And
In
is
one of our
there
meetings, I had described what we do as countercultural, but I was corrected by somebody suggesting that prophetic was a better way to describe what we are trying to do when we meet to worship and when we sing together.
I love it. Prophetic.
I do too. And I just think, to tie the two comments together, you talk about music as formation. Is there anything in the church that we do that is more formative over time than the songs that we sing? We may not remember that lesson from Sunday school or church school. We may not remember but a handful of sermons with detail, but we know the songs that we sing and the ones that touch our hearts, and they do change us. And we think about, as a pastor who at times has to spend moments at the end of someone's life, and sometimes the memory is gone. There's very little activity or engagement, but sing a hymn, sing a familiar song, and you can physically see in that moment a connection. Catherine, did you have something to add?
I think that is such a tremendously important and deeply religious experience. And it's true in children's lullabies as well. This week in our congregation, we're singing a piece that may be in the collection that comes from the Ojibwe people, and it is a lullaby. Very simple, very beautiful, very moving, and it comes from the sampler for the collection that we are creating. In the video that Lydia presented, she used the phrase that I think is perhaps the most definitive and the most important phrase in what we're doing. And that is that faithful song is antidote to fear. That faithful song is antidote to fear. And whether it's a child who's being rocked with a lullaby, or an elderly who is leaving and maybe afraid, or perhaps isn't, but the others in the room may be afraid. That's part of it. And so there's that familiarity of song. There's also the remarkable safety precautions that then we take as pastors who are choosing the music, as music directors who are instructing the congregation and the choir in how to move through a piece. And so that also means the pieces we don't choose, that either come from a theology that's abhorrent in the community or that has been known to cause damage. And, there is nothing, well, that's not true. There are many things, but I think in all of our identifying factor as people of the word, part of people of the word is that we are people who gossip, and some of that gossip is true. And we learn about damage that is done with music, because music can cure the soul, but it can also deeply harm. And so in our choices as antidote to fear, we are offering music leaders and pastors the opportunity to step aside from music that has caused harm and offering explanations about why that is. In the United Church of Canada, similar to the United Church of Christ, there's tons of expanse over which people can choose the music that they're choosing. But we as pastors and we as people putting together collection have a responsibility to think about who is singing the music and to offer the protections that we can, and to proactively say, we hear you. We stand with survivors. We are on your side. We will support you. We are not just behind you, but we are right beside you. And when you need us to give voice or to silence the voice of singing, we have the authority and the power, and we will exercise that because that's our responsibility. So that line, faithful song as antidote to fear, is remarkably important. And in a global culture that is so full of despair and fear, we get to be what Lloyd is speaking about, which is the prophetic voice that brings that antidote into that very conspiratorial expression of faith in our congregational song.
Thank you for that. I think it's really a critical issue and an important practice as we consider not only the theological import and implications of the music that we sing, as well as the rest of the liturgy, but also the moral and ethical implications. I know that in some of the conversations we had, we talked about we know that there are long-standing hymns where the character and the life stories of the authors and composers of those works were also questionable or where they cause damage and harm. Can you talk a little bit about some of that conversation and why continuing to include some of those resources, as opposed to asking some of our congregations to step away from music that has been identified in this resource by our work together?
I think one part of that conversation that was really important for me was around community. So what are we doing to help restore the community? What are we doing to help heal the community? And what's the entire community care? So it's not about trying to shun or ostracize in any way, but in terms of how are we caring for each other, and how are we doing that faithfully and ethically? And I found that a really helpful conversation that we had around restorative work in that.
We have commitments in the United Church of Canada to become anti-racist, and we're doing a lot of work on that. And so looking at our hymns and figuring out where a white supremacist Jesus appears has been really important work. So that's one other example of places where we're taking this seriously.
And like the colonialism. So like those hymns that come up that speak to a very specific understanding of power, a very specific understanding of land, and a very specific understanding of superiority, really, and how we deal with those hymns, particularly because the language is subtle and it's coded, but it's clear. So
exactly. This is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation as we are thinking about reimagining ritual, that there's some work that needs to be done in making sure that we are caring, being attentive to the potential for appropriation, misappropriation, for inserting coded language intentionally or unintentionally, because it can not only be the actions of a composer, but it can certainly be the content of material as well. And then also the piece of engaging with the impacted communities to see how they feel or how they respond to a work. I can think of an example where there was a particular hymn that was taken to, I think, the elders for consultation to see, well, let's not make assumptions on behalf of the community that would be impacted.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And then there have been particular hymns where we have gone back and added a bit of context. So for instance, we have a hymn in our current collection, and I'm not sure if it's in the United Church of Christ, Zanzanina, which is a song of lament, like what have we done? And we realized that many communities were using it out of context. This song came out of the apartheid movement, and it had a lot of complexities around singing it in solidarity, both sides, but also singing it out of that gross injustice. And so we realized that people were using that song without knowing the context. So we've gone back and added context in it to hopefully help people make a better choice when they're singing that song, to sing it in appropriate spots within the liturgy.
Great. Yeah, there was a question in the Q&A from Reverend Carolyn Collins of asking for examples of hymns that harm and why. So I think that's one example. I think other examples is terms of some of the language that's used, and some of it is colonialized language, white supremacist language. And it can be as subtle as the ways in which we use metaphors. So for instance, there are a slew of metaphors for dark and light imagery found in, it's found in scripture, so it often gets translated into hymnody. And the issue is that dark becomes a metaphor for evil, which when you have a history of racism and colorism, in addition to as a particular form of racism, where people with darker skin are further marginalized and seen as unclean, or seen as predatory or evil, or more criminal, and those kinds of things. And using that imagery, that metaphor, basically affirms those myths rather than dismantles them. The reality is, in the biblical overall witness, you can find also wonderful metaphors that use darkness as a beautiful thing, as an inviting thing. And so there's not that balance that though to be found necessarily in hymnody. So are there any other examples? Just
to go with
ahead.
that example of the light and dark, like one of the hymns that isn't going to be in the collection that we had lots of conversation about, and I have had lots of conversation with folks within particular communities of faith, is Fairest Lord Jesus. Fairest Lord Jesus, we know, is a beautiful hymn, and the music is gorgeous. And the language of that hymn is harmful on many levels. And it's not just the word fairest, which has been changed to beautiful and lovely and many other reiterations in hymn books. It's also the poetry of it and how it wraps around fairest. So fair are the meadows. Fair is the Western society and Western seasons and Western views, and all of these imageries that go towards the four seasons and go towards life in the Western hemisphere. And this is fair. So what it's saying is anything in other hemispheres is not fair in comparison, and fair is beautiful and just. So that play on words becomes even more problematic, which is part of the reason why people loved it for its beauty, but it's also reinforcement of 400 years of a certain form of justification for wrong.
It's insidious. It's insidious. In 1987, I went into a congregation where a young woman had asked to be confirmed, and they didn't have a minister around. So they'd worked on it as a congregation. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But the hymn she chose was Where's Lord Jesus, because she was blonde. And it really had to do with everything that Lydia is talking about and identifying with all of that. It was quite appalling. It was a really interesting teaching moment to work with her and the congregation about why that was her choice, and how she was lifting up her own identity as being something aspirational for everybody else. It was quite remarkable.
Yeah. There's also, it's not quite in the same way, but like we also have decided not to include O Canada or God Save the King in the collection. And there are many reasons for it. Some of it are along the similar veins of where the church stands within church and society, and also an understanding of how that sits with different people at different times within a worshiping community. So like that was a interesting conversation to think through and work through ourselves.
And critical for Canadians, because we have come through a truth and reconciliation process that carries on, and we are still acting on it. And the United Church of Canada was formed in part to become the United Church of Canada. And part of our historic reach was to take in all the other Protestants, to stand up against the Catholics, and to make sure that any Orthodox that were around joined our ranks as well. So that was deeply an image of what it was to be Canadian. So we, as the United Church of Canada in particular, need to be letting go of that hymn as we are honest about our heritage and about our true turning around on that. So it exemplifies our decision not to be that anymore as we take that piece out.
Great. Thank you for that. Just as a reminder, we have a few minutes, so if you do have a question, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. There is another question. Let's see, Doris MacArthur says, speaking of shared ownership, how can we get involved with or contribute to this project?
Oh, that's great. We'd love to have you all involved in the project. Think of a few ways right off the bat would be to sing with us. So hopefully if you're a part of your of UCMA, that we hope to have some presence at your next gatherings. So to help sing there, to be in touch with Peter, who is the chaplain of the United Church of Christ Music Association, about ways to connect or join a sing and share session. We'd also love for you to access the resource. So once this resource becomes live, it's going to be on one license. So if you have a one license, you can get into our portal. So you can use and share and provide feedback on this resource. I will put in the chat the link to our newsletter, so that way you can get updated on what's happening and if there's any upcoming webinars or sing and share sessions, so you can learn more about Then Let Us Sing and also become a part of the community so that you can engage with things as they're happening.
Will that be thenletussing.ca?
Yes, thenletussing.ca is our website. So I'll put that in the chat too. But we also, the newsletter is a separate link. Well, actually, good call, Lloyd. I think if you just go to thenletussing.ca, you can sign up for the newsletter there. You're absolutely right.
So
And
another
that will provide.
Great. And Nancy asks, how often are hymnals revised or replaced? And is the United Church of Christ undergoing a similar project? I'll start with the second half first. No, we are not currently in a hymnal project. We are collaborating with our partners, our siblings in the United Church of Canada. And we have other projects that are are on the docket before I think we are considering a hymnal project. And I think it really, in terms of, I think that this Then Let Us Sing and this new portal is really a potential for a new model of updating our music resources. And I will say that we are in the United Church of Christ looking to revamp how we share all of our worship, liturgical, and theological resources, and to create a portal that will be very user-friendly and adaptive, and provide resources in a variety of ways that are easy to capture. But I think that the way this project is, it's not a completely new hymnal. There is a tremendous amount of new music, but all of the music is accessible through this portal, will really transform the way that we're able to plan our liturgical offerings.
I think so. I think, I think in the past, it used to kind of be on this 25-year cycle that hymn books would be reviewed or renewed. But as Lloyd had mentioned before, when we started to survey and look about replacing Voices United, we realized how much it was still being loved and used and discovered. Like, there's still hymns in there that people haven't learned yet. And and the access to hymns from other denominations is so much larger than it was. And there's so much access to new music that there's a new role for hymnal committees in curating and helping to shape, to take the abundance and kind of funnel it down to what might fit our ethos and who we are hoping to be. So I do agree that I think that the way that hymnals are working is changing, and we hope to help be at the front end of this change. And we also realize that resources are limiting, and the amount of congregations who would be able to like drop $10,000 to like buy a new set of hymn books isn't there in the same way. The cost of paper isn't there in the same way. So
the availability of paper, it's been very interesting in working with our corporate partners and finding the challenges that I'm fairly or unfairly, I think that maybe some has been laid at the feet of Jeff Bezos, and a lot of the paper production has gone to Amazon packaging. But yeah, the reality of smaller sized congregations in many cases, and restricted budgets. But the features that Lydia described earlier on, the opportunity to make some necessary revisions easily, but also periodically to make additions without needing to form large committees and do a multi-year projects. If we can put it on a 2 or 3 year checkup, and people are constantly writing new material wherever they are, and this is our opportunity to add to where we see that it's appropriate new material.
And we're constantly learning new things. Like, we're constantly learning things that we thought was appreciation that is really appropriation, language that we are learning is harmful. And as we learn these new things, we're able to incorporate them. Like, one of the language things that we have learned from this session that we didn't have in the same way when we were doing Voices United is around like binary language and binary. And we've been able to adapt that. And I imagine, and I hope that 5 or 10 years from now, we are going to learn more ways of being more inclusive, and we would need to make those changes.
Mm-hmm. And just along those same lines, Nina asked a question about patriarchal bias.
I'd like to speak to that just for a second.
Please. Yeah.
To say, and to scoop into the question before that, we published with the Anglicans in 1971 a hymnal, and then in 1996, Voices United, which we are retaining. And as we were working toward that 1996 publication, there was a lot of work on patriarchy and changing language and looking for hymns that spoke about women, that spoke about girls, that spoke about God as female, not just as mother, but as female. So it has been part of our active work for a long time to be looking at patriarchy and about questions of where gender arises in the metaphors and in the directed specifics of the music that we're doing. So that's very much there. And as Lydia says, moving on into other understandings of gender orientation and gender expression and who people really are, who we really are, has been critical.
Great, thank you. So this will probably be our last question before we wrap up from Kim. When will the digital hymnal be available? What's the expected cost? So a little bit about timeline and how you might be able to access this.
Well, our sampler has just gone out this week to our trainers, the people who are going to be introducing this to congregations and events over the next several months. But the publication book for the book portion will be the anniversary of the United Church on June 10th, 2025. But the digital version will be slated to be available on June 10th, 2024. So the countdown is on. And there was a good question about the ability to change keys and a variety of arrangements and so on. We're aware of those kinds of requests, and it's just a matter of what do we do first and how much can we afford to do. And at this point, we just want to get the material together and get it out there. But for years, that's what people have been looking for, and different instrumental accompaniments and that sort of thing. And lots of commercial endeavors provide that, and go online looking for music, you find that, and well, what key do you want it in, and that sort of thing. That the technology has moved along, and it's just a matter of what GIA is able to land into, include in their package.
And the beauty of it is, because it is a living resource, is that it can be adapted and modified going forward. So it can only get better, which is wonderful.
Absolutely.
I'll just give everyone an opportunity. If there's anything we haven't captured in this conversation that needs to be shared, or you'd like to make sure we don't leave this time without lifting up. Lydia, I'll start with you.
I think it's just as you said, the possibilities are endless, and we're so excited to be in partnership with you. When we started this, we were looking to do an ecumenical resource, and then it turned into a United Church resource with an ecumenical appeal. And I think one of the goals of the United Church from the beginning, but in different ways, but over the past few years, has really been to live into what it means to be a uniting church. So we're excited to unite with others in this project.
Wonderful, thank you. Catherine, Lloyd, any last words?
I would say this this project has made my heart sing. I've been working with marvelous people who have been very diligent and very expansive in their imaginations, and I know that this is going to make our hearts sing as we go forward, and it's very exciting.
So then let us sing. Unfortunately, we can't do it on Zoom very well.
We try.
We try every so often, but it's it ain't pretty.
It's a struggle. It's a struggle.
It's amazing that the work of Then Let Us Sing, this whole group of singing and so many musicians, almost the majority of our planning has been through Zoom. It was all through the pandemic, so we didn't have face-to-face meetings for the first year and a half, and we found ways.
Yes. Yes.
It's still very, very good to sing together. So
Yes.
yeah, join us wherever you can, whenever you can.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Lydia, Lloyd, Catherine, for joining me in this conversation and for this wonderful work. Then Let Us Sing. And we will certainly keep everyone updated on progress and opportunities to engage with the resource. And for everyone who joined us on this webinar, Nurture the Soul series, thank you again. We are so grateful as always for your presence, your gifts, and your questions. Thank you for being with us, not only today, but all along the way. Join us every Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Nurture the Soul, and look for those special offerings from time to time. Again, we are always producing opportunities to engage, and you can find a full list of upcoming digital program offerings at ucc.org/events or any of our social media platforms. And if you missed it up front, please consider donating towards the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your prayerful and financial support helps programs like this, the essential work of the United Church of Christ. We thank you and we thank you. Blessings to all. Join us next week for another Nurture the Soul as we continue to reimagine ritual.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye now.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.